Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, if we could take our seats, please. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, my name's Fenton May. I have the privilege of being president of the board of directors of the Fulbright Association in Washington, D.C. And we're particularly honored tonight to have with us the former president of Finland, who has still many United Nations special assistant positions, Mr. President Martti Ahtisaari. And before we introduce President Ahtisaari, I'd like first to thank those who've traveled many thousands of miles, and many of whom got detached from their baggage along the way. And we're very patient, and I hope just about everybody's got their baggage now. But our Moroccan and American colleagues, as the sort of co-hosts of this event, are particularly appreciative for those and with the assistance from our friends at the State Department who travel so far. And we probably have representatives of more than 60 nations in this room. And I think Senator Fulbright will be looking down and smiling on us at this point. And it's truly remarkable, and I think I'd first like to start by thanking the hotel staff for their assistance in providing a super capacity crowd. Et pour le personnel de l'hôtel, nous vous remercions pour cet très bon repas. Merci. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker, whom we as Fulbrighters had the privilege of honoring in 2000 as the Fulbright laureate for the J. William Fulbright International Peace Prize. And many of you were there on that occasion when President Ahtisaari reminded us of our responsibilities as citizens and the importance of everybody contributing to understanding and peace. I think as one looks around at representatives in this room from as far away as New Zealand, Kazakhstan, and Russia, Swaziland, Botswana, the southern part of, I think we have Uruguay, Argentina, Mexico, of course, Japan, Korea, China, Sri Lanka, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Nepal. We're truly represented by the subcontinent of, as it's called. We should all remind ourselves of this opportunity to reflect, as people who have been privileged to have had an education, and in particular a Fulbright scholarship, of our responsibilities in our community and in the way in which we influence the governments with which we live, of their responsibilities to world peace and of helping to lift people out of poverty. And I think our presentation this afternoon, which will also be the keynote speaker tomorrow at lunch, so I don't want to scoop him, the idea of lifting people out of poverty is near and dear to all of our hearts. And we have with us this evening a truly distinguished person whom we are very privileged agreed to address us this evening. And of course I'm referring to the former president of Finland, President Martti Ahtisaari, currently United Nations Special Envoy, I believe living in Vienna, in continuing resolution of issues in Kosovo. Mr. Ahtisaari has a very distinguished career, and for those of us who touch many continents, it's involved the disarmament of the IRA, it's involved the resolution of what used to be Southwest Africa and became peacefully Namibia, and exists today as almost a model on the African continent, and I think largely due to the peaceful resolution and conflict resolution that Mr. Ahtisaari brought to that situation, and most recently the work he's been doing in many issues that linger in Europe, particularly in the former Yugoslavia. And so we're truly privileged to have what one of my American friends who knows Mr. Ahtisaari very well says. When I mentioned to him that Mr. Ahtisaari will be talking to us this evening, he he said, well, you guys have truly got the world's best mediator coming to talk to you. So with that, I think I would like to introduce President Ahtisaari and welcome him to the stage.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a speech here, but I will put it aside because I promised my table that I will be merciful and short. I was actually checking who this friend of mine was who had said this, so it's always nice to register what my friends are saying. Thank you very much for your patience, and I apologize for interrupting the vivid discussion that has been going on in different tables here. I thought that I would say a few words about two processes where I have been involved these last two years. The first one is the negotiations that led to the peace agreement on the 15th of August last year on Aceh, because that process is typical in that sense that the Crisis Management Initiative, which is the non-governmental organization I helped to establish in Finland in year 2000, was instrumental in carrying out those negotiations. And it was a process where the Indonesian government didn't want to accept UN as mediators. They basically felt that they had had enough of UN in East Timor, and the government was not terribly keen on turning to UN. Nevertheless, I kept the Secretary General Kofi Annan well informed about this process because there were moments when he could help me. He and I used to work together. Actually, he was my staff member when I was Undersecretary for Administration and Management. Now the stakes have turned. Now I work for him. But we have remained friends ever since I joined the UN in 1977. But Aceh was an interesting exercise. I was first approached by an editor friend of mine in February 2004. He said that there are two gentlemen who would like to see me. He called me on Saturday evening and said that could these two persons come to see you tomorrow afternoon on Sunday. I said, if you bring them, I see them. And it was a Deputy Minister of Health, Farid Hussein from Indonesia, and a countryman of mine, a young businessman who had worked in Indonesia for many years. They were coming from Stockholm, where they wanted to have a meeting with the Free Aceh movement, but didn't succeed in having that. So they thought that they have to see somebody and wanted to see me. They asked for my advice, and I said, go home, Minister, and think, what can you offer that would make it so attractive that the Free Aceh movement would come to a negotiating table? Because there had been negotiations for 3 years, which ended up in December 2002 into a cessation of hostilities agreement, which was negotiated by Henri Dunant's Center for Humanitarian Dialogue from Geneva, which then broke down half year thereafter. So I didn't hear anything before, a few days before Christmas 2004, and then they asked us to get involved. Before I agreed, I asked to see the representatives who were living in Stockholm. Some of the CAM leaders who had been in Stockholm for many years were actually Swedish citizens. So I ended up negotiating with Swedish citizens on the fate of the province of Aceh in Indonesia, which was rather, we could even speak Swedish if we wanted to. Why was it that we succeeded in these negotiations? I think I have to accept the fact that when tsunami hit Indonesia and Aceh particularly, over 200,000 people died. And I heard from the government very clearly that they said that they are not prepared to grant independence to Aceh, but they are prepared to give a far-reaching autonomy to the province. And I said to the movement, come, that if you come, it's worthwhile that we see what the government will offer you. So we started. I had 5 meetings during 2005, January the first one, and then last one, which actually was the final substantive one in July 2005, and we made the agreement and signed it finally on the 15th of August. I think it was clear that one needed a new government in Indonesia, because when a new government came to power on the latter part of 2004, they made it clear, both President and Vice President, that they were prepared to look for a peaceful solution in Aceh. And the GAM finally was also prepared, because they realized that it would be possible within those arrangements we negotiated to actually start a new life and democratic society, move Aceh towards a democratic society. There was a moment when I had to travel to Indonesia in May 2005, because I started receiving intelligence information from GAM, which showed that there were a lot of abuses of power in Aceh. In prisons, the behavior of prison personnel, and there were other information which I came to the Indonesian government and some of the governments in Indonesia who were represented there, and asked them to seriously do something about that, because I said otherwise we are not able to make peace. We succeeded. I think Aceh is also, why I wanted to take Aceh as an example, is that there's a very vivid civil society in Aceh who have been active in that province during and after tsunami, during the fight that took place for 30 years. And we also try to learn from the mistakes of the earlier negotiations. One of them was that non-governmental organizations should never monitor any peace agreement. I said to my staff that don't even dream that I would allow our organization to take that sort of function. Indonesian government was prepared to accept regional players from ASEAN countries. 5 of them were invited by them. I immediately said that why don't you invite another regional organization, European Union, and let these 2 regional organizations work together. After a little thinking, they said yes, they are prepared to accept. Then I had to convince European Union to actually do it. And I had to call some capitals and try to convince them, and I was told that there are great demands for the resources of European Union, but if you are ready in August, we will support you. So finally, European Union proved to be extremely flexible and was able to move without any formal decision, so that when the 15th of August took place and agreement was signed, we already had people on the ground. And there were all in all roughly 200 people. Now the numbers are coming down. The important element of that was that the GAM movement was handing over their